What does Taoism imply about our significance in eternity? Taoism implies we can connect ourselves to a sense of purpose. We can by removing the distractions on the outside in order to concentrate on the inside, find peace with ourselves. Just what is peace? Peace is a sense of understanding that there is purpose to life. Peace is sensing one is fulfilling that purpose. One is on track. One is doing what one is intended to do. Fate or destiny. But isn't this predestination, determinism, fatalism? How can one sense what does not exist? If everything is predetermined, then why is it that so many people feel they can obtain a sense of what is, quote, right and wrong, unquote, good and bad, to be done and not to be done, the correct thing to do and the incorrect action? Taoist concepts only have meaning if freedom is a natural state. There are two forms of freedom: freedom from one's peers and freedom from the causative force, or a type of freedom that perhaps atheism and agnosticism claims for itself. But is that true freedom? I would say no. Freedom from one's peers releases one from having to be subservient to the whims of others. One may lead one's own life. One has the ability and latitude to choose one's own actions. Freedom from the causative force, or freedom from God and or spirituality and religion, is nothing other than the existence of free will. I would argue that this type of freedom isn't necessarily aligned with divine will. It is in fact, to me, a form of rebellion. Freedom from having to be subservient to the whims of the causative force, or God. One may lead one's own life. One has the ability and latitude to choose one's own actions. Without both forms of freedom, freedom from members of one's own species and freedom from what occupies the abstraction of existence without time, one isn't necessarily free. Religion, in this sense, can actually imprison. But I would argue that true religion and spirituality does not. It allows for full freedom. Even freedom from the confines of one's own carnal logic or natural mind. Without freedom, attempting to stay in contact with one's self, one's sense of purpose, has no meaning. Determinism totally undermines the concept of Taoism. Remaining in contact with oneself, one's purpose, in order to choose that path. Taoism implies we have a significance to eternity itself. We can impact eternity. If we could not, then attempting to connect with oneself with abstraction or metaphysics with a sense of purpose would have no meaning, since everything under determinism would already be predetermined. If everything were predetermined, then being in contact or not being in contact with a sense of one's self and one's purpose would change nothing. Taoism tenaciously resolves to connect with eternity, the inner self, through nature, exemplifying the concept of our significance to eternity. What does Taoism imply about our relationship to the causative force, or God? The world is also used to mean reality as a whole, or the word Taoism, which consists of all the individual ways. It can be said that the West provides us with places to meditate, such as cathedrals and churches and mosques and temples. True, the West has its innumerable houses of worship in every community, but they are unavailable. They are all locked up to protect these places of meditation from disrespectful members of society. The West has its beautiful cathedrals reaching to the heavens, true, but they are filled with the unending procession of humanity streaming through its doors in an insatiable desire to see the wonders of the human potential, to pay homage to its God or Creator. The West does have its regimented clockwork of opening the doors to its places of worship for hours every seventh day, but meditation, the process of connecting individual awareness or consciousness with the causative force, the whole, cannot be done through regimentation of conformity and communalism. The Western approach of connecting with the whole has its place in terms of what lies outside of the individual, but the Western approach does not have the ability to maximize the potential of the individual soul to connect to the essence it senses within itself, to the essence of awareness, transcendence, the abstraction which lies outside of itself. This outer essence lies beyond the boundaries of our universe. This outer essence of awareness from which the universe came, the causative force, or God, from which the individual came, from which the individual is isolated, lies outside the individual, but can only be reached by digging deep within the individual soul. This is where Taoism comes into play. Taoism, or the Way, provides us with the process of maximizing our potential to sense our connection with a causative force, an absolute, an ultimate, or what religion calls God. The means of doing so: shucking the distractions of the West and immersing ourselves in isolation within nature. Nature then being a form of church without walls. The Taoistic process gives our inner essence, our souls, the opportunity to connect with the greater whole through the process of communing with nature, immersing ourselves within nature. Taoism is a process of letting go of materialism and distractions of the West. Taoism is a serious means by which we can give our bodies and minds over to something we trust, nature, in order to allow our abstract to freely indulge and bask in the sense of wonder and connection to its origination without the worry of suspicions and distrust life imposes upon the individual. In conclusion, how do the concepts of Taoism reinforce the concept of symbiotic panentheism? They do not. What is actually taking place is symbiotic panentheism is reinforcing the concept of the significance of Taoism. The two, the East and the West, philosophies centuries and worlds apart, complement each other very nicely. To give one greater value over the other is to lose sight of the significance each has to offer. The West provides us with our understanding of what lies outside our essence, the external. The East provides us with the understanding of the internal essence and its sense of connection with the whole of existence, not just within the boundaries of the universe, but well beyond this boundary and far into the realms that lay beyond the temporary border of our physical universe, into infinity and eternity, beyond time and space. Taoism provides us with the understanding of why our environment is important to us, not in terms of the physical resources it has to offer us, but in terms of the church. It is for our inner essence, a place for meditation, a place for us to take refuge from the high-paced life of the West. The rat race. The environment is the physical home for our soul as we travel through this aspect of our existence. We have an obligation to keep it clean, not just for ourselves, but for the myriad of other souls that will be claiming it as their own and using it in their own efforts to remain connected. It's difficult to make a connection when smelling the fumes from rotting garbage, viewing dead fish along the riverbank, tasting oily or bleachy water from a bubbling stream, listening to sonic booms amongst the rustle of the leaves, and stepping on rusted cans littering the forest floor. Taoism provides the reason for the environmentalist. The sense of purpose for the environmentalist, or the eco-theologian. The connection of the environmentalist work to the causative force herself. Taoism has much to teach us. The East brings out the best in our potential to gain knowledge of ourselves through meditation and intuition and spiritual practices of moving inward. The East has turned its efforts toward developing our ability to find the one small thread of an umbilical cord that was not cut as we were thrown into the isolation of the vast expanse of space known as the universe. This umbilical cord pulsates with the scientific sense of individual awareness, with the religious sense of total awareness and with the philosophical sense of the whole being equal to the sum of its parts, and perhaps even greater than the sum of its parts.